Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff of pure, cold cash. You are looking down at a pile of $1 trillion. To most of us, a million is life-changing, and a billion is world-altering. But a trillion? That is a number the human brain isn't even wired to understand. If you spent $1 every single second, it would take you 12 days to spend a million. It would take you 32 years to spend a billion. But to spend a trillion? You would have to keep spending that dollar every second for 31,709 years. This isn't just wealth, it is a mathematical anomaly. By the time you finished your shopping spree, the pyramids of Giza would be ancient history 10 times over. Today, we are going to dive into the absurd, terrifying, and psychologically breaking reality of trillionaire math. We are going into a world where the laws of economics seem to bend and break. We are going to try to spend it all. We are going to buy the sports teams, the islands, the mega yachts, and the private space programs. And I am going to show you why no matter how hard you try, you literally cannot spend money fast enough to go broke once you hit this level of wealth. But first, we need to understand the scale of the monster we are dealing with. Think about the most expensive thing you can imagine. Maybe it is a Gulfstream G700 private jet. It costs $75 million. If you were a trillionaire, you could buy one of those every single day for 36 years. And even then, you would still have hundreds of billions left over. This leads us to a fascinating question that economists and psychologists have been debating for years. At what point does money stop being a tool and start being a burden? Or better yet, at what point does it become mathematically impossible to lose? Most people think that if they won the lottery, they would be set for life. But we've all heard the stories of lottery winners going broke within 5 years. They buy the mansion, the cars, the jewelry, and suddenly the taxes and maintenance eat them alive. That happens because they have a finite pool of wealth. But a trillionaire does not have a pool. They have an ocean that creates its own weather systems. Let us look at the math of passive income. If you have $1 trillion and you put it into a very conservative investment, something that returns just 5% a year, you're making $50 billion in annual interest. That's $137 million every single day. Or if you want to break it down further, $5.7 million every hour. Every time you blink, you have made enough to buy a luxury car. By the time you finished your morning coffee, you have earned enough to buy a mansion in Malibu. If you do not spend at least $5 million every hour, you are actually getting richer. This is where the concept of spending to go broke falls apart. To even start chipping away at your original trillion, you would have to spend more than $137 million every day, 365 days a year. Try to visualize that. What can you even buy for $100 million? You can buy a world-class painting, a super yacht, or a significant stake in a tech company. But you have to do that every single day just to keep your balance from growing. If you take a day off, you are behind. If you go on a week-long meditation retreat where you do not spend a dime, you have just added $1 billion to your net worth. It's a treadmill of consumption that you can never run fast enough to stay in place on. Let us try to break the bank. Imagine you decide to buy every single professional sports team in the world: the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, and every major European soccer club. Even if you overpay and spend $100 million, you still have $900 billion left. You have barely made a dent. In fact, within 2 years, the interest from your remaining $900 billion would have replaced all the money you spent on the teams. You are literally trapped in a cycle of success. This brings us to a psychological phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. For you and me, a $5 coffee is a small treat. For a millionaire, a $5,000 watch might be a treat. But for a trillionaire, there is no treat left. When you can buy anything, nothing has value. You lose the dopamine hit of a purchase because there is no sacrifice involved. You didn't work for it, you didn't save for it, and it didn't reduce your bank account in any meaningful way. This creates a strange kind of financial nihilism. If you can't spend it fast enough to lose it, what is the money even for? Is it power? Is it a score in a game? Now you might be thinking, I'd just give it all away. But even philanthropy at this scale is a full-time job that is harder than it looks. If you wanted to give away your annual interest of $50 billion, you would have to find a way to distribute nearly $1 billion every week. You would have to build hospitals, schools, and infrastructure projects at a speed that the physical world can barely support. There aren't enough construction crews or materials on the planet to spend that much money efficiently. You would literally hit a bottleneck of physical reality. You are trying to pour a gallon of water into a thimble. This is why the world's richest people often pivot towards things like space exploration or life extension. They're not just hobbies, they're the only things expensive enough to actually put a dent in their capital. Building a rocket program costs billions. Trying to solve aging costs billions. These are moonshot projects because only the moon is expensive enough to be worth their time. But let's look at another angle. What happens to the world when one person has this much money? It creates a wealth black hole. At a certain point, a trillionaire stops being a participant in the economy and starts becoming the economy. If you try to spend your $1 trillion on real estate, you would end up buying so much property that the price of housing would skyrocket, making your remaining properties even more valuable. You are essentially fighting against your own wealth. The more you spend, the more the assets you already own increase in value. It's like trying to empty a bathtub while the faucet is running at full blast and the drain is blocked by gold bars. And then there's the issue of taxes. Even at the highest tax brackets, the sheer volume of wealth means that after-tax income is still astronomical. Most trillion-dollar wealth is held not in cash, it's held in appreciating assets like stocks and land. These assets grow tax-deferred. A trillionaire can borrow against their assets to fund their lifestyle, meaning they never actually have to sell their shares and trigger a tax event. It's a loop that allows wealth to compound infinitely, far faster than any individual or family could ever hope to spend. Let us consider the legacy of such wealth. This is not just about one person, it's about generations. If that $1 trillion is passed down and it continues to grow at 5%, in 100 years, that family would have over $130 trillion. That's more than the current total GDP of the entire world. We are talking about a level of power that exceeds that of most nations. This is why the math of a trillionaire is so different from the math of a billionaire. A billionaire can still lose it all through bad luck or poor choices, but a trillionaire has reached a critical mass where the money becomes self-sustaining and self-expanding. They have achieved financial escape velocity. So what is the takeaway for the rest of us? Is it just to feel small and poor? Not at all. Understanding trillionaire math helps us realize that the pursuit of more for the sake of more is a trap. If there is a point where money becomes unspendable, then there is also a point where money stops adding quality to your life. For most people, that point is much lower than they think. Research suggests that after a certain level of income, usually around $75,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on where you live, the link between more money and more happiness begins to flatten out. Beyond that, you're just chasing a bigger number on a screen. The Trillionaire is the ultimate proof that money is a tool with a specific function, and when you have too much of it, it loses its purpose. It stops being about freedom, and it starts being about management. It stops being about joy, and it starts being about influence. As we move into an era where we might actually see the world's first individual trillionaire, we have to rethink our relationship with wealth. We have to ask if our current systems are designed to handle this kind of concentrated economic power. And more importantly, we have to ask ourselves what we are actually working for. If the goal is to reach a point where you never have to worry about money again, that's a noble and practical goal. But if the goal is just to see the number go up, we might find ourselves on a treadmill we can never get off, much like our hypothetical trillionaire. In the end, the math is clear. You can buy the yachts, the jets, the islands, and the empires, and you'll still wake up the next morning.